People talk about the immigrant dream, but nobody talks about the moment it begins. The moment you close the door to your childhood home, knowing you may never walk through it again. This is the part of the journey we never post online. The pain of starting over, the fear of the unknown, and the courage it takes to keep going. When you ask most immigrants where their journey really began, they won't tell you about the airport, the visa, or the day they landed. They'll tell you about the day they realized they had to leave everything behind. For Mariam, that moment came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. She was sitting on the floor of her childhood room in Bujumbura, running her hands over the old cracks on the wall. The same cracks she traced with her fingers as a child when she was afraid of the dark. Her mother stood in the doorway, pretending to smile, even though her eyes were red from wiping tears all morning. Mariam had always imagined that leaving home would feel exciting, like the start of a grand adventure. But when the taxi arrived, it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like a funeral. She hugged her brothers tightly, kissed her mother's hands, and took one last, deep breath of the warm, familiar air she grew up in. That's when it hit her. She wasn't just traveling. She was letting go of her entire world. A friend, Angelique, once said that immigrating felt like being born again, learning to walk without the hands that taught you your first steps. Mariam understood that feeling deeply now. And even though she wasn't fleeing war or immediate danger like so many others, she carried the same profound ache, the guilt of leaving people she loved, the gnawing fear of what would happen to them now that she was gone, and the heavy silence of knowing she could no longer be there to protect them. Every immigrant knows this pain. It's the ache of stepping into a new life while simultaneously mourning the old one. It's the quiet heartbreak that precedes the journey, the part that doesn't make it into the triumphant social media posts. It's the moment you trade your history for a future you can't yet see. Landing in North America didn't make things easier. At the airport in Toronto, the world moved at a dizzying speed. Officers handed her documents in English, the words blurring together on the page. She nodded politely, pretending she understood, while inside, a wave of panic was rising. One wrong signature, one misunderstood question, one simple mistake, and everything she had sacrificed, everything she had left behind, could disappear in an instant. She remembered the stories she'd heard back home, stories of mothers at the border who unknowingly signed away their rights because they couldn't to read the language. Stories of people locked in rooms for hours, their confusion mistaken for defiance. Stories of even legal residents, Canadians and Americans, suddenly detained and questioned, their status fragile and uncertain. No immigrant ever forgets that first moment of complete vulnerability, of placing your entire life into a system you don't yet comprehend. When she finally walked out of the airport into the biting cold air, she expected to feel relief, a sense of freedom. Instead, she felt a profound loneliness for the very first time in her life. Back home, neighbors knew her name. They'd call out to her from their porches. Here, in this bustling city, no one even looked up. The sea of faces was anonymous, and she was just another drop in the ocean. Her first nights were quiet in a way she had never experienced. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was an empty quiet. She cooked food that didn't taste the same, the spices missing something she couldn't name. She ate alone at a small, second-hand table, and sometimes she cried quietly because there was no one there to knock on her door and ask, "Are you okay?" Loneliness became her shadow, following her from the sterile government offices to the crowded bus to her empty apartment. Every immigrant has lived through that silence. The days filled with confusion, the long lines, the mountains of paperwork, and the crushing feeling of being utterly invisible. It's the part of the journey no one posts online, the silent struggle that happens behind closed doors. But Mariam had a why. Her why had a name, Amina, her daughter. Back home, she used to watch little Amina doing her homework by candlelight, her small face scrunched in concentration. She'd fight sleep as she carefully wrote her dream on the first page of every single notebook. I want to be a doctor. Mariam wanted her daughter to grow up in a place where dreams were not limited by political instability, by economic uncertainty, or by fear. A place where a child could dream simply because dreaming was normal, not a luxury. That vision, that image of Amina in a doctor's coat, carried her through the cold, dark mornings. It pushed her onto buses to jobs she was vastly overqualified for, jobs that wore down her body but couldn't touch her spirit. It fueled her through the long nights she spent studying English, a dictionary in one hand and her daughter's school uniform in the other, ready for the laundry. Every single time she felt like giving up, every time the weight of loneliness and struggle felt too heavy to bear, she would close her eyes and whisper to herself, I didn't come this far for nothing. And slowly, so slowly, she almost didn't notice. Step by painful step, things began to change. She made one friend at a community center, then two. She found a small shop that sold the right spices, the ones that made her kitchen smell a little more like home. She started to smile again, a real smile that reached her eyes. Amina, resilient and bright, adjusted too. She made friends, her laughter filling their small apartment. And one day, she came home from school, her face beaming, clutching a piece of paper. It was a school certificate that said, Honors Student, Science. Mariam took that certificate and hung it on their apartment wall. To anyone else, it was just a piece of paper. To Mariam, it was a medal of honor. It was a trophy from a silent battle she had fought and won. Her sacrifice had a purpose, and it was unfolding, blooming, right there in front of her. Every immigrant story is different, but the heart of that story is always the same. We leave everything we know and love. We walk into systems we don't understand, feeling small and powerless. We fight loneliness, we fight fear, we fight to be seen, and we keep going. We keep going because our why is stronger than our pain. Our reason for starting the journey is more powerful than any obstacle we face along the way. So if you're in that chapter right now, if things feel heavy, the papers, the language, the money, the isolation, I want you to remember this. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from courage. The courage it took to leave, the courage it takes to stay, the courage it takes to build a new life from scratch. And one day, not too far from now, someone will look at your life, at everything you've built, and they will say, now I understand. Now I understand why you never, ever gave up. Thank you for listening. If you got value out of this story and want to ensure we can keep publishing high-quality, free advice every week, please consider supporting us with a Facebook star. It's the best way to say, keep up the great work. Find the star icon and send your support now. Follow Motivation+Finance for Freedom in USA for more stories, financial tips, and motivations. Together, we build freedom in America.